Hello fellow cultivators, welcome to a second video of a series of Tale of Immortal skill guide. And first, I have a warning at the beginning of this video, so this video might be quite boring because I will mostly talking about theoretical stuff like subskills and so on. And also, if you haven't watched the first video of this series, so basic knowledge, you might not really understand what I'm talking about. So if you are really interested to learn this and are willing to listen to me blabbering for quite a long time, you can take a look at the first video first and stay here. So this video we will be focusing on common subskill that is really good for almost every single build in this game. And so there are certain ones, for example, for the four active ones, martial, spiritual, special, motion, ultimate. In general, all of them would have, as example, cooldown reduction subskill, and that is one thing that you should always aim to have for all of these categories. And basically, when I say you aim to have, which means if you're learning a manual and you realize that manual do not have a cooldown reduction subskill in it, maybe do not learn it, or at least using an enigmatic stone to transfer your previously learned cooldown reduction subskill to this new manual if this new manual is really good in other ways. Basically you really want every single of your skill to have a cooldown reduction subskill, and that's just as an example. So this video will be focusing on similar kind of subskill that is like that you want to have in every single skill. And since we have talked about cooldown, so let's first finish this topic. So in order to understand how cooldown is calculated in this game, you can refer to two of my other videos. One is how do you reach zero cooldown special skills for some builds, and another one is how do you reach zero cooldown, nearly zero cooldown martial/spiritual skill or left mouse button skills in this game. Both of them should be in the same playlist as in this one. So basically, just to show it again, the cooldown in this game is calculated first. You have the basic cooldown of one skill, for example, Earth Bolt, have basic cooldown 0.8 seconds, and then you directly minus the 0.2 seconds from it if you have this subskill, the last one, the skill's cooldown minus 0.2 seconds in this case, and if you have obviously comprehend to maximum. And after this, it will multiply by the percentage modifiers, and finally, the final result will be minus the conditional flat cooldown reductions. So this video will only be covering the first two types. So basically a subskill directly flat reduction in that skill itself, and also the second one, basically percentage modifiers. And also I'm only talking about the things that are in common for every build, not like, let's say it's only specific for this one build. And that's why I'm not covering the third type, because those are only specific for certain builds. So as I mentioned previously, in general you want to have this flat cooldown reduction in your every single four of your skills. That's one thing. Now for the percentage case, you basically are coming from this one single type of mind skill called mastery, or so-called crit manual. As you can sort of see here, I'm talking about mastery, I'm talking about cooldown reductions instead of crit. So crit is the least important thing within this manual. What you are aiming to have, what is shown here, it is a kind of a perfect mastery manual or mastery mind skill. Obviously it is not coming legally in this game, but it is possible with the introduction of enigmatic stones, just to let you know. So why do I call this perfect? Because when you look at 6, 8, 10, 12 subskill here, it has the 4 subskills basically reduce the cooldown of all the 4 different types: martial, spiritual, special, motion, and ultimate. So this is quite good. Now, if most likely when you start to learn a manual, you won't find a manual that have all the 4 subskills like this. You maybe have some of them have 2 and some of them have another 2. Then you can use the enigmatic stone to merge them together and select those subskills to reach this kind of perfect mastery. And and of course you want to comprehend it to maximum. That's just as usual. And basically mastery is the only mind skill that you can get as a general thing. You get cooldown reduction percentage ones, and that's why, in my opinion, this is actually the most important mind skill for any build. Because things, for example, zero cooldown special skills are kind of impossible without the 25% percentage modifiers here. And in general, no matter what build you have, you want to use your skills as frequent as possible. And that's why cooldown reduction is always one of the most important things to have. And in general, you won't find any other type of minor skill which contains percentage cooldown reductions like this. So mastery, extremely important, and that is the one single minor skill that I would recommend you to use Enigmatic Stone on to get a perfect one. Now, since we are finishing about cooldown stuff, now let's go back to different type of skills and I will talk about what are the things in common. So a martial/spiritual skill, usually you would find things like subskills like this. This skill deals 7% more damage to all enemies. This skill deals 15% more damage to mythical beasts, etc. And in fact, let's say if I go to not you menu library, let's see, this one not have everything. What about you? Okay, this is actually a pretty good example. Look at the lab. So the second subskill, this skill deals 5% more damage to normal monsters. Third one to mythical beasts, and the fifth one to all enemies, seventh one to cultivators, and then the ninth one to elite monsters. So basically, you can have any type of martial spirit, you can have this kind of subskills. Usually the maximum, so if the skill itself is red, rarity, and you comprehend the maximum, then you have 15% to normal enemies, which means all the mobs, elite enemies, which means those elites, and as well as those fun fight, as well as the thing in the target in the martial skill arena that is also a elite for some reason. And then mythical beast, the giant beast which has a giant health bar, and the cultivators are those NPC cultivators. However, I would say that for me, a perfect martial spirit skill do not contain any of them. That would be a perfect thing to have, but that is kind of not possible, because for transcendent skill you would have 12 subskills, so 11 minus the main skill thing, and because all the special type of subskills is much less than 12, in general you would have like 4 or 5 subskills that it contains like, okay, you deal more damage to certain things, and out of them the perfect case would be all of those 4 or 5 subskills would be 7% more damage to all enemies. 7 is less than 15, but this is at least useful in all the cases. So that applies for not only for martial spiritual, but also to your special skills. So you can see always there are things like to deal more damage to all enemies or things like that. Usually for special skill you should have 2 or 3. That is the case. And finally for ultimate you would also have 3, 4, 5, something like that. So those 3 skills always have this type of thing, and in general I don't think they are useful. I mean, that can be seen from the game itself. As you know, the upgrading book, if you have the earth level upgrading book, you can always apply those general subskill to it, upgrading. Only the heaven type you can apply other subskills. That shows that the game tells you, yeah, these general subskills are not good, you should aim for the other ones. And so that's basically the general thing. Now, another thing about generally martial skill have is usually it's always in the 4th subskill. So upon hitting an enemy, it has a chance to either apply a buff to yourself or apply debuff to the enemy. So that is there. And related to this, if you are really lucky in the perfect case, like in this one, when you look at the 9th, 10th, and 12th, so you would have the subskill to increase the maximum stacks of this buff debuff, a subskill to increase the duration of the buff debuff, and finally a subskill to increase the effect of the buff debuff. For example, in this case, the debuff is Bone Fracture. What does Bone Fracture do? It is have 1% chance to stun enemy for 1 second for each stack, and then the final subskill is to increase the chance to stun for 2%. So usually this subskill would actually increase the effect of this buff debuff itself more than it is. So if you think for a certain case that this buff and debuff, their effects themselves are something you want to have, then you definitely want to have this subskill to increase its effect. Bone fracture is a perfect example. And similarly, internal injury is also great. And another, for example, here, stone skin. You can also see there are stone skins stacks +3, duration +3 seconds, and damage reduction. And in this case, the basic damage reduction minus 141, and the subskill makes it plus 478. So that is about 3 times. So yeah, if you want the effect of buff debuff, definitely chose to have this subskill. But if your buff or debuff is just for you to detonate it, to trigger your special effect in your special skills, then you don't need to aim for the subskill here. But in general, I would recommend you to have the maximum stacks +3, because maximum stack is you always need. Even in the late game where you already have enough maximum stack to fulfill most of the conditions for the detonation, still +3 maximum stack makes it easier to reach those conditions. And duration, yeah, it's something like, okay, it's good to have, but it's not that necessary. While in middle game, you probably really need this maximum stack +3 for your build to work. So yeah, get that. Now, special skill, they are mostly depending on build, so this will be covered in the next video. I won't talk about it here. And ultimate, same thing. Just a thing to say that, yeah, in early, many ultimate have some sort of subskill to increase the duration. For example, the 6th one here, the giant golden duration +6, and yeah, in general, you want that to happen. And something special about the motion skills. So, fun fact about motion skills, there are some subskills in many cases you want to avoid. Like for case of motion skill like Earth one, you know that you basically enter the ground and you jumps up. And during that entering ground time, you cannot even move or do any. You can move, but you cannot do any attack. So there are motion subskills which increase duration for the motion skill, but you probably want to avoid that. Similarly, for many type, for example, fire motion, you want to avoid the subskill to increase the distance, because that will make your time that you cannot do attack longer. So basically, you want those subskills to not be there, so that you do not waste those time. But yeah. And now let's come to the good part, or say even more boring part. So divine power is let's say we just talk about mastery, and so basically divine power, mastery, and secret manual are mostly build dependent. So there are still something to talk about that. What are the things in common? For example, let's say divine power, mastery, we just talk about their cooldown reduction is there, and secret manual is fun thing is there are a lot of different type of subskills even for each build, so it looks very, very complicated from beginning. But once you take a look at it, you will realize a lot of them have something in common. For example, there is almost always the case subskill that increase the maximum stacks and duration for the buff and debuff. For example, the 4th one, the 5th one, and the 10th one are increasing stone skins, stacks, duration, and increasing sluggish, so the debuff stacks. So that's the 4 different type of subskill you might have. And also, there is very possibly to have this one subskill that basically every time you detonate the debuff, you have a chance to apply a buff, or vice versa. So it allows you to convert the buff to debuff, because the problem is your martial skill will only have this one type thing. You can either apply a buff or apply a debuff. For some builds, you might want both of them, and that is the time when the secret manual, this subskill to work, basically allows you to have both of them to work on you. But that usually requires you to either detonate something, which means you need to use special skill from that element or art root. So that's there. And finally, there is subskills like when you enter the battle, it applies debuff to the enemy. And also every 4 seconds, it applies the buff to yourself when there's only one enemy. So this is basically automatic apply the buff debuff thing. And this usually they are useless. The only exception is when you enter the battle, this is something also works for your, let's say, for your phantom if you have a water motion. And that means every time you generate a water motion phantom, your phantom enters battle, it will apply another stacks of the debuff to the enemy. And this can be very useful for Water Sword with the Bone Fracture or Internal Injury debuff. That's just an exception there. And that's something in common about secret manuals. And as for Divine Power, it's really hard to say there's anything in common. If there's anything, it's usually you have things like when some stats reaches some value, for example Earth stats, or case like if your HP, MP, or Focus reaches a certain value, it can increase your defense, attack, energy, etc. So if you want to min-max your attack and stuff, you want to those Divine Power or Mastery to have such subskills, but usually you don't really need to, actually try to chase for it. And so that's the 3 special ones. Now let's talk about the 5 general ones. And of course, we will start from the most useful one, move or the attack one. So move, attack, move, it can have 5 different type of special subskills which greatly increase your attack. So in general, you have things like attack, pure flat attack, so second and third one. But also you can have others. For example, the 5 are usually, so the 11th one, for every 3 martial arts points, your attack will increase by 1. This will probably the most important subskill you should want to aim to have in your move. Because just think about it. Right now, I am at Transcendent. The base attack is 1000, and the base attack for each subskill is 451, that's maximum. Now, think about every 3 martial arts points, my attack will increase by 1. My martial arts point in general should be 6000, because each of them have 999. And 6000, every 3000, that means this one subskill will bring me 2k attack. That is already 2 times than the basic move itself. So that is the reason why, this one, and as well as other 4 different types of subskills, is really the main reason. Many people are asking this question, like, why do I only do 1 damage to the enemy? That's usually because your attack is too low. When your attack is less than the enemy's defense, you do 1 damage to them. And how do you increase attack? They will say that, yeah, but when you tell them that, okay, you should learn a mind skill, they'll say, yeah, I have mind skill. It's even red, but still my attack is too low. But when you actually look at the screenshot, usually either they do not learn any of the subskills, didn't unlock any of them, because they do not know how to upgrade. You need to upgrade your skill, or when they upgrade it, they never comprehend it, or most importantly, do not have any such kind of really useful subskills. For example, this one subskill that increase your attack based on your martial art points can bring double of your attack of the base skill itself. That, of course, when you are in actually a bit lower realms, the effect is not this extreme, but it is still really, really effective. And in general, if you have all the 5 special subskills in the move, which is again impossible unless you use enigmatic stones, your attack value can be like way more than you do not have it. For example, right now you see I have 16k attack, right? If I decrease it, if I don't equip this, I have only 8k. So equipping this one move brings me doubles the attack, and this is not even the maximum of the attack that I can have, because I do, despite that I do have all the 5 subskills, I do not min-max it like with other things. So yeah, that's just in general thing. Now the second type of subskill out of 5 is the 9th one. For every 280 maximum HP, your attack will increase by 1. So that is a bit weird that it does not really work exactly as per the numbers. So, but that will mean that if I remove my Sutra to reduce my HP, it reduces some of my attack as well. And you can see it reduces 300. So it is not that powerful for some reason. But this just means that because I'm only reducing half of my HP, and somehow it's only 300, that means the maximum, let's say, out of the 300k HP, it should bring me to like 600 to 700. It's still much better than the standard 451 attack increase. And then the other type including, for example, any of your martial art reaches 950, or if you are lower realm, this number will be lower, your attack will increase another 900. Similarly, when you focus, attacks increase. And finally, when your energy reaches a certain value, your attack will increase. So these last three are kind of similar. And basically, they allows you to. So 902 is exactly 2 times 240, 451. So if you have any one out of the three type of subskills, it counts as 2 subskills. And in general, I would say if your move have, let's say, at least you should have 1 or 2 of those out of the 5. And that is kind of usable in Chaos. And with the introduction of enigmatic stones, you can actually aim in for to have 3 or 4. Maybe not necessarily 5, but if you can't have 5, why not? And attack is probably the most important stat in this game, because I think I've never really said it, but in general, how the damage in this game is calculated is basically the basic damage from your skills multiplied by your attack minus enemy's defense, and then multiplied by 30 and divided by bracket 30 plus enemy's martial or spiritual resistance bracket. So you cannot change enemy's, martial spiritual resistance. That is something you cannot change. You cannot change your defense as well. The only thing you can change is your attack. So basically your damage is solely determined by your attack. I mean, that does not count all those percentage damage modifiers, for example, the one you get from martial skills or from your fairy flames or etc. etc. But basically, your attack really determines your basic damage you do to the enemy. So that is one most important you need to have. And you want to have, out of the 5 different special subskills, maybe at least 3, I would say. And now the second question is, so there are other subskills. For example, when you look at the fourth one, when there are 5 alive, the damage will increase 15%. There are many different type of subskills like this. And you might be thinking, but underworld situation, maybe those subskills will be more important because, if my attack is already much higher than enemy's defense, increasing a little bit more, maybe the relative increase of the percentage that you get by minus enemy's defense will be less than the 15%. That might be the case, but I would say in most of the case that is in this game, if you are dealing with enemies like mythical monsters within your correct realm, you won't reach that value. So basically, if you have 4 or 5 special subskills, your attack is so high that you might enter that stage that, okay, maybe just by increasing percentage modifiers will be better than increasing attack itself. But that is something you really need to calculate to min-max, but I don't think in general you need to worry about it. There are certain cases, like you just want a percentage modifier instead of attack. That is, of course, true damage builds. If your builds are based on true damage, which means you have Blade of Heavenly Eye, or if you have Palm Internal Injury, or, for example, if you are using Heelbreaker Fist. And in those cases, well, if you're using Heelbreaker, in those cases, you want to have the damage percentage modifier instead of attack, because you are doing true damage. So there's no such thing as attack minus defense. You are ignoring enemy's defense or resistance. So in that case, just give up all the attack subskills, but put on all the possibly reached damage, percentage damage modifiers for your move. But again, if that's the case, you know that that move is only useful for that single build. If you want to switch to a different build and different skills, it won't become useless. So actually, maybe not do that. And as a counter example for defense, so you also have special subskills, like in defense, just like the attackers. You have the basic defense plus 300. You have the things like for every energy point, your defense increase, and when your HP increase certain value, your defense increase, etc. And in general, I wouldn't bother much about defense, min-maxing about defense, because the way this game does is, most of the case, no matter how you min-max your defense, the enemy's attack in your same realm, the mythic monsters, is higher than your defense. So it's not really that useful to do that. You might want to have something in this case, actually, just opposite. You might actually want to have certain things like percentage ones. For example, when you have shield, you take 9% less. And also when you have inside the area of Fairy Flame, you damage reduced taken. So percentage modifiers like this in the defense manual might be better just by simply increasing defense. And that's all because depending on enemy's stat, because how much damage you take is also enemy attack minus your defense, similarly to how much damage enemy takes is your attack minus enemy defense. The whole value data in this game set is such that for attack it's better to increase your attack, and for defense it's better to simply add in the modifiers. And I would say similarly, I usually do not really try to min-max the maximum HP, the special ones, as well as maximum MP, the special ones. Again, because for these two, I would say the HP recovery and MP recovery subskills are much more important compared to the maximum one, because you are constantly losing HP from enemy's attacks, or you are constantly losing MP by using your skills. And what you wanted is actually recover instead of just a maximum. So if there's the exception, of course, when your maximum HP matters, when you have things like this, to increase your attack based on how much maximum HP points. Similarly, for the attack things, they have things like, when your maximum energy reaches 117k, then your attack will increase this much. So you want at least your maximum energy to reach this threshold so that will increase your attack, but not because you want the maximum energy itself. So that's the special cases. And but yeah, I would, if you want lift up your maximum HP, you try to aim for the things like for every single 1 herb point, your maximum HP increase. So, and also for every 1 martial art point, your maximum HP increase by 6. So the 6th one and the 10th subskill. That's things you want to know. And for guide, for the MP, probably for every 2 skill points, your maximum energy increase by 1. And if you actually think about it, your skill points in the end game should be at least 6,000, because that's when you can actually equip all the transcendent skills, mind skills, red mind skills. But it can go to 9,999, and that means you will get 5,000 MP simply from this one subskill. So that's quite useful, right? And for the recovery one, then it's kind of depending on what kind of build you have. For example, if you have summon build, you definitely want something like when your ally dies, or you recover MP, HP, or when they're depending on how many allies you have, you recover HP, MP. If you are not using summon build, there are other ways but I will put it in the next video. And one thing extremely important, and that is general for guide, which I've been talking about in many different cases, it is the 11th one. For every 1 enemy you use to cast skills, you will receive 5 shield points. And this is extremely important. You should aim for this subskill from the very, very beginning of the game. And no matter what kind of build, let's say except blood energy type of skills, you should always aim to have this one. And because shield are so good to protect yourself in this game, no matter how many shield points, how less shield point you have, let's say you have only 5 shield points, enemy deals 1 million damage to you in that one attack. That 5 shield points will cancel that 1 million damage if it's one attack. If the 1 million damage is coming in 2 different ones, then it cancels the first one and you die the second one, of course. But yeah, because that's how shield cancels attack in this game works, you should always aiming for this thing. It will greatly increase your survivability. And that's why usually in the first thing I do in this game, I go to different towns, or in my sect I look for a guide which have this subskill. Basically, I call it shield guide. This is the most important thing you should aim for. And no matter how many times I upgrade my skills, either I find a good guide which have this subskill, I learn it, or if I find a good guide without this subskill, I use enigmatic stone to merge it. You need to have this subskill, it's so good. And finally, this leads to the final mind skill, Compendium, and that is your focus skill. In general, I don't think focus is that much useful in different builds, because the only reason I want to have a Compendium, there are only 2. One is I want to pop up the maximum focus so that I can get more attack. It's from the subskill. The second one is Compendium is the essential case in most of the tradition effect, 4-set tradition effects. For example, here I want to have it because I can have the 2-set effect of Mountain Might, and that's really the only reason I want to have this. Because in general, I don't think focus is that useful, and but however, there are some very, let's say, niche case. So when you look at the 4 subskill here, every time you cast a special skill, the cooldown elixir usage minus 5 seconds. So this can actually become extremely useful when you are using 0 cooldown special skill build. So basically, because your special skill has 0 cooldown, that means your elixir usage is also extremely short. Basically, every time you use an elixir, you can then eat an attack elixir, and that will greatly increase your attack to a very high value. So at least because you can also have, for example, the 9th one, maximum elixir stack plus 6. And this thing basically allows you to bring in, more than 5 elixirs, attack elixirs into the game. And because usually when you eat it, you have cooldown, but now with this, every time you use special skill, the cooldown reduces. So you just get to have a lot of attack increase in a very short amount of time. And yeah, that is of course very powerful. The thing is, if you have a 0 cooldown special skill build, it is already so powerful that you basically kills everything within a few seconds. I don't think it's necessary for you to add this more powerful thing onto the top of it. But yeah, theoretically, if you like to min-max and if you like to go to the minimum short time to kill enemy, yeah, sure. Equip this thing, equip a good attack elixir, then get into a 0 cooldown special skill build, yeah, do that thing. So yes, I guess that covers everything. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, this is probably a very boring video for many of you. And I actually don't even expect many people to watch this or to at least finish the whole video. But yeah, if you like theory crafting or to make builds in general, or let's say you are really stuck with the fact that I am not doing enough damage to the enemy, I'm doing 1 damage, how should I increase my attack? Then you can check out some part of this video. But here, just to have a summary, let's say this commonly good subskills you should aim to have, or you should try to keep it with your enigmatic stones, is cooldown reduction, flat cooldown reduction 1 for all 4 of the active skills, and percentage cooldown reduction 1 from your mastery, and the 5 special attack increase subskills from your move, and that 1 shield subskill from your guide. And then, depending on what kind of build you have, you want some kind of HP and MP recovery ones from your guide and Sutra. And yeah, depending on what kind of buff, debuff, detonation mechanic you have, you want to have some kind of maximum stacks subskill from your martial spiritual skill or from your secret menu, so that you can reach the condition of the stacks of the buff debuff to get your special effect. And in case you just want the effect itself, for example, Bone Fracture, then aim to have that 1 subskill to make the effect better, for example, chance to stun +2. So that will be everything. And thank you for watching, and I hope you like this video. If you actually manage to have that much patience to sit through all of this, and please consider leave a like or subscribe to my channel. I will see you next time.